And we welcome you to this edition of Night Shift. Finally, the game ended. The war on I-4. UCF won. I think they did. 58-46. We think. Doesn't feel like it. I'm Eric Lopez alongside Andrew Gluchov, who will hopefully have answers for us on what we just saw for over 4 hours on this game as the Knights do come out victorious.
To this edition of Night Shift.
It was more interesting than I think people would have thought. Coming up on this game, we're going to talk about what went right and what went wrong, who played and who didn't play. We'll discuss all that coming up on this Night Shift. Brian Murphy is in Tampa. He's currently at postgame. We may or may not get him. I'm not going to lie. I have no idea because we did not expect to go for over 4 hours on this football game. Reminder, you could certainly click underneath there, subscribe to the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube page, subscribe, like us. We're going to do more videos like these throughout the season, live and on recorded as well. So we certainly encourage you to do that throughout. Of course, you can follow us right there at UCF_Banneret on Twitter. There's our site, blackandgoldbanneret.com. And right there on Facebook is where you can find us. So that's where you can have us there. Of course, Andrew will be writing his recap, his knee-jerk reactions. That's a very appropriate word because I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of knee-jerk reactions right away here on this one. Yowza. So, Andrew, I think the first simplest question all I could ask is, how do you describe what we just saw?
Ooh, that's a good one. From the offensive side, this is kind of typical, UCF offense, but this defensive side was just a complete dumpster fire. What's the best way a defensive failure to launch? You look at the numbers, USF looked more UCF-like than the Knights did. This was awful. The defense, was routinely out of position, bit on pump fakes, stutter steps, and other fakes. Used way too many shoulder tackles that reminded me of Jason Vincent back in the mid-2000s. They didn't use really any smart technique. As a result, this Bulls offense just ran roughshod over this defense. This was embarrassing. It was downright embarrassing. USF was, 107th coming into this game?
Ranked 107th offensively, and they put up 646 yards. They more than doubled their average total yards in this football game and outgained UCF 646 to 577, as you can see it right there. They rushed for 242. They made this offense look like the Quentin Flowers South Florida offense. I got to give you credit, Andrew. You've said this from the beginning of the year. You were not really encouraged for what you were seeing from this defense all year. You kind of point, and even on your recaps throughout the season, you pointed out some issues that you saw in this defense that, quite frankly, never got fixed, did it?
Well, in some ways you couldn't fix it because part of the problem was a lack of depth, and it only got worse when you lost starters. And while they played a spirited game against a Houston team without their best weapon, a bad Temple team, and then had the home field for Cincinnati, in which Cincinnati's, they're not an offensive juggernaut themselves, but, UCF's defense really held them in check for the most part. Then this is like the wheels fell off. Maybe they had too much turkey and they were just, still feeling groggy or too much stuffing and were just feeling bloated and heavy. But it spilled over, all the frustrations and issues that have built up over this year spilt over, and the Bulls took advantage of it. And if it wasn't for the fact that UCF's offense is just that good, we'd be having a very different conversation tonight.
Well, thankfully, offensively, they did enough. What was your thoughts on the offense? Obviously, the story before the game, no Otis Anderson, no Marlon Williams. Now we'll get to the players that didn't play, and one in particular that people were a little fired up about in the pregame. We'll talk about that later. But the offense still clicking, even with being as shorthanded with a couple of their offensive skill guys. What'd you think of the offense?
Well, the good thing is that Trey Nixon was back, because if Trey Nixon was out and Marlon Williams was out, UCF would have been in a lot of trouble. They don't really dig any further down into the barrel for receivers. It took them a while to kind of get the ship moving. They struggled early on and just kind of seemed a little bit lost, finding themselves without Anderson, without Williams. But as the game wore on, partway in the first quarter and into the second, they started finding their stride and started realizing the tools that they had and adapted their offense to fit it. The problem was we came back to the offensive line, which is something we've hammered multiple times all year. USF's defensive front was able to really harass Dillon Gabriel quite a bit. And even when they, dropped back 8 and only rushed 3, Gabriel just never really felt comfortable. And you could see that. At one point, he was taking too much time throwing, and that's how his interception happened. Or he was rushing it, and ball would sail 10 yards downfield to nobody. He just never quite got comfortable. Definitely, this was and I know a lot of non-Heupel fans will love hearing this. USF outcoached UCF, and it wasn't by a close margin.
Well, expand on that. When you say you think that Scott outcoached Heupel, in what ways do you believe he outcoached him?
Well, one of the things about a coach is you have your game plan, you go through your script, and then you take what either the offense or defense gives you. And in the case of Josh Heupel, who calls the offensive plays, take what the defense gives you, and was never really able to settle down. Granted, USF doesn't have a good defense. It's just a bad team up and down. So the fact they scored 58 points, I think part of that was because the Bulls scored and gave the ball right back to UCF, and they were able to do their thing. But when you look at it, there was only maybe 2 or 3 drives that UCF really efficiently just carved them up. One of them was that 2-play, 71-yard drive that happened in 26 seconds of game time. I haven't seen one of those in a while from the Knights offense, and it was fun to watch. Dillon Gabriel's strength has always been his deep passing. The further he throws it downfield, the more accurate he gets. And you didn't see too much of it. You saw a handful, but you really didn't see too much of it. And part of it was because he was just getting harassed, behind the line of scrimmage and got sacked a couple times because of it. You have to change your tactics. And while UCF made up ground in their running game this time around against a much more porous Bulls defense, they really never lit the world on fire like UCF's offense is known for doing. In fact, when you look at the final tally in yards, it was below their season average for most of the year.
Yeah, it was. Well, you can send your questions in right now. They're available. They're open. We got some questions already on our Twitter page, and there's going to be questions here on our YouTube page here, so feel free. Michael Rakowski, once again, 3rd week in a row, has chimed in first. Quote, and I thought Chenander's defense was horrible.
He's not wrong.
I have a feeling, Andrew, we're going to get a lot of questions about this defense. Let's be real. That's going to be the headliner as far as the on-the-field stuff. Let me jump right into that. This defense is young. They're very young. They have a lot of inexperience. I mean, you have players like Tatum Bethune and Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste and Gaines and Thornton, players that have had that are getting increasingly more playing time but don't have much game experience. And you saw a lot of exposure this time around. Jean-Baptiste was routinely caught flat-footed, roaming around as a linebacker. And again, UCF runs primarily a nickel defense with a 4-2-5 setup. So you got your 5 defensive backs, you got your 2 linebackers. Well, that's Bethune and Jean-Baptiste, so they have to cover half the field each. And when one's out of not in the right position in that little middle third area, you're in trouble. And that's what was happening a lot. And that's where the good coaching comes in. You exploit those weaknesses that come up. UCF's defensive ends did a pretty good job. Morris Brash, once again, is just a wrecking ball, had himself a pretty good day. A little bit of an unnecessary roughing the passer call early on, but settled down, made a lot of good plays. But routinely other players out of position. Those defensive backs played very soft, and it gave a lot of room for McLeod to just carve up the offense, throwing for over 400 yards against this defense. Oh, that is I think the thing that's going to bother people here, Drew, is the fact this was an offense that was ranked 107. It's one thing if you give up all these yards and points to a good offense like Memphis or an SMU or even Cincinnati. I think the thing that's going to bother people here is this was a team that really struggled to score points for the most part all year, was one of the bottom worst offenses in college football, ranked 107th in total yards, and wasn't really at full strength. That's what's going to bother people.
Well, no one's at full strength. That's the nature of this year. No one's at full strength, and you have to play with the cards you were given. And UCF's defense took way more damage throughout the season, even before it with opt-outs, than the offense did. And the offense was always the strong part. So you were already playing with a stacked deck on defense, and it just got worse and worse. And now it's basically a hospital ward at this point, between guys injured or opt-outs or dismissals. You're just scraping up players, get out on the field and do something.
All right, so Brian Murphy's in Tampa, as we said. He is in the post-game pressers, and we've got some comments right away. There's Brian talking to Josh Heupel, said he found out about Marlon Williams wouldn't play early in the week and that Otis Anderson wouldn't play during the middle of the week. Quote, next man up mentality. Let's discuss that a little bit there, Andrew. Where did you see, Marlon? There's been speculation that he's not a healthy. Remember even the Cincinnati game last week, he kind of was banged up a little bit. I think he missed some of the fourth quarter. Clearly not at 100% there. And then Otis obviously couldn't play. So your thoughts on those two not playing? I'm not surprised. I think personally we've seen the last of Marlon Williams as a Knight. He's got his stock's up right now in the NFL. He has nothing left to prove, in my opinion. What's your thoughts on that? And where do you think they missed him? It's kind of weird to say that when you just scored 58 points, but you felt they kind of missed him a little bit, didn't you?
Well, I mean, of course you're going to miss your top wide receiver and your top running back. I mean, you're always going to miss your best guys. But the truth is the offense adjusted. It took them a little bit, but they shifted, they adjusted. Jacob Harris had himself a very good game, despite the fact he's had some stone hand problems earlier this year. He had a fantastic game. He was the man at times, making some ridiculous catches. But you can never say, oh, well, it's fine, we don't have those guys. You're just lying to yourself. It hurt, but he's right. Coach Heupel's right. It's next man up, because what are you going to do? And Marlon Williams was pretty beat up. I understand he wanted to work on his health, get ready towards the NFL draft. Makes me think that if there's a bowl game, we offer no guarantees. A discussion for you and I a little bit later tonight. It will. He's not going to be a part of it. I don't expect him to play in any bowl game. Otis Anderson, I think he may be done. I can't guarantee that. Different situation. Williams has a much higher draft stock. Anderson, it's kind of hard to figure out what they'll do with him in the next level. But he's got a lot of versatility. But sometimes versatility can be a bad thing, because jack of all trade, master of none. I would not be surprised if neither played again, but I'm pretty certain that Marlon Williams is done at UCF.
You mentioned bowl season, bowl game possibilities for UCF. Josh Heupel has chimed in as Brian Murphy again on Spokes_Murphy, quoting, "I don't think this will be the last game of our season."
And I don't either.
That's an interesting quote, though. I don't think this will be the last game of our season. What is it? That's not 100% like we're definitely playing another game. I don't think this will be our last game, but you never know. It comes off to me.
There's no guarantees. I mean, we're in a COVID world right now. Nothing is for certain. We just had another bowl game cancel, the Pinstripe Bowl up in New York. I think the ESPN Bowls are going to fight tooth and nail to stay on. ESPN needs those games. They need that inventory. So they're going to, I think, fight really hard to keep them going. But there's no guarantees. You're comparing, in this case, the ESPN Bowls, which most of the American Athletic Conference Bowls are tied with their pooled games, versus most other bowl games that are nonprofit run, which have a very different mentality. So the nonprofits have been the one that have been dropping out. The for-profits ones, ESPN, have been sticking around outside of the Bahamas Bowl and the Hawaii Bowl for obvious reasons. That makes perfect sense for those to go away. I expect the 3 ESPN run bowls, the Gasparilla, the Cure, and the Boca Raton bowls in Florida to stay as long as possible. Florida's made it very inviting for those games to keep going. And I expect UCF to be at one of those. We've both been on the same boat on that. In fact, that would be Boca Raton, especially with the pinstripe, which was a Big Ten versus ACC bowl game going away. I think it only makes it even more of a reality that I think the Gasparilla Bowl will be an ACC team and not an American team. I think you muted yourself. And Eric has broke his computer.
So, now you hear me, right?
There we go. I
muted myself. I don't know why. I thought I was Tony Reale and I muted myself.
That's why we can't have nice things.
It's this kind of day. It's been that kind of day. All right. So you say you think they'll play the bowl game. We're live. That's beauty. That's the beauty. Can't edit this out. Give me the reasons why it's a good idea to play the bowl game, because there will be people that will say, what's the point of playing a bowl game that doesn't really mean in that the big picture of things? It's not like you're going to play a Power 5 team more than likely. You are in the middle of a pandemic. Are the players going to be motivated to play in that bowl game? Your response to all that is what?
One, players will be motivated to play because players like to play. You find me a player that doesn't want to play in a game, and they're probably going to be off the team real quick. There was never a game I never wanted to play. In fact, if I had pads today and a body that was 10 years younger, I would run out of the field somewhere and just hit something. That's the competitive spirit. That we're wired for that. As far as if it's good, it's a chance for a little extra hardware. It's a little more notoriety in a good way. And in the case of it being within the state of Florida, I think it's a lower risk, game. It's a bus ride away. It doesn't require flying. There's a lot more control. I think for UCF's sake, it's not that compromising. You can still be careful. You can still be smart, but you'll be able to add, the fun and game aspect of a bowl game. It's for the players. It's not really for the fans. The players, they're the ones who worked hard to earn it. And wouldn't it be nice to be 7-3 versus 6-3?
I do think you would agree. There will be players that'll probably opt out of the bowl game if you play it. Would you agree with that?
Oh, sure. We already talked about players like a Marlon Williams who probably wasn't going to play no matter what would happen.
Right.
Yeah, it's a given. You're going to have players opt out, but unless you have a team mutiny, which I don't see happening, but I know the UCF upper brass and coaching staff are going to communicate with the players before they make any commitments, because you're not going to commit to something and also try to back out of it.
Right.
I think they'll all be on the same page and be, okay, are we in or are we out? And then go from there.
Got a question here. Trace, our buddy, chiming in. If you put a positive spin on the defense this season, it's what?
And don't break. Actually, no, there is some positives. 2020 has been kind of a wash year. A lot of strange things have happened. Players that should have played did not. But this also gave youth a chance to learn, and this doesn't hurt their eligibility. A Tatum Bethune, a Corey Thornton, guys that weren't getting on the field before got on the field a lot and got experience. I think that goes a long way and should make us feel a lot better of 2021 going forward. Now, the real question isn't about that. The real question is who's going to be coaching the defense in 2021. Because Randy Shannon's contract is up. And after this game, I don't know if UCF can really justify bringing him back. Aside from the price tag he's probably going to command, the product has been just woefully atrocious.
Yeah, they were ranked in the 90s coming into this game defensively. That's not going to improve. And that's been reports that, his contract might be up. at least from what we have read on that. So we'll see how that goes. Koseg Advisor has chimed in. I was wondering. I was hoping he was okay. I was expecting him to chime in quicker, but he goes, some of this is on the defense. Likely want to prove something with young players. How much of these struggles is accredited to youth? I know you brought that up earlier, but just for those that is this a youth problem? I don't think this is a talent problem, right? I think we agree there's some talented individuals on this defense. I don't think this is an issue where this defense is depleted.
They're partially depleted. It's a partial thing. The talent that's left is good, but you still need depth, and then they've lost the depth. Their youth, I wouldn't say youth is a problem. Youth is just a fact, and it comes with good and it comes with bad. And we had inspired play out of linebackers and defensive backs and defensive linemen that have come in during the year. But on the flip side, you're also seeing technique problems. A lot of shoulder tackles. Shoulder tackles don't work in college ball all that well, especially from defensive backs. You got to have more of a wrapping technique, take the legs out, or else all they're going to do is bounce off and you turn a 5-yard gain into a 25-yard gain. And that happened multiple times during this. So we've seen good and bad. I think where youth comes into play is lack of consistency. Sometimes you fall into bad habits. The new good habits haven't really taken root yet, and they're still working on it. And with a rivalry game, you can lose your focus a lot more easily. I mean, we saw a player ejected needlessly for losing their cool, and that's what rivalry games do. It doesn't matter if a team is 10-0 or 0-10. When that rivalry game starts, all bets are off, and it's because of the emotional impact of the rivalry game. A lot of these players, they played high school ball, prep ball with a lot of UCF and USF players. They know each other. They're friends and competitors, and they want to one-up each other. They want to stick it to them. So it's just the natural competitive spirit, but passion can sometimes get in the way of sense, and football is really a mental game. And if you're mentally out of it, you're physically going to fall out of it.
Questions, people chiming in. Robinson, Richie Grant, Marlon Williams, definitely done. That's a statement on the comments. Do you agree with that? Do you think this was their last game?
Oh, well, yeah, I do.
Trey Nixon, do you think this is his last game?
No. I think Trey will stick through a bowl game. Do I think he's done as far as not coming back next year? I don't think he's coming back next year. But as far as playing one more, because he missed so much of the year, I think he still feels he has something to prove.
The only thing I would wonder about, he came back, which I didn't know if he would be back, and he came back in time for the Cincinnati game. Did he come back? Obviously, he came back to help the team, but did he come back knowing in the back of his mind that this might be it for him, that he's going to go pro? Who knows? I do wonder about him if we just saw him for the last time as a Knight, because that was a serious injury back in the Georgia Tech game. And to see him coming back, and he looked good. He looked good in both games. I wonder if, hey, this is my time to now as well follow Marlon and try to make it in the NFL. I'm not, again, that's just speculation on my part, but that's kind of my question about Trey, whether this is the last time we see him either tonight in this game, or if they play in the bowl game and he ends up playing in the bowl game to perhaps showcase himself, right? Because sometimes you can, if you play in a bowl game and you play big enough, then you might showcase yourself as well to the pro scouts. So that's what I wonder about Trey.
Well, I think I think he can have the Brandon Marshall effect, where Brandon Marshall just absolutely ripped apart Nevada in the 2005 Hawaii Bowl, and that skyrocketed his draft stock from kind of middling to a third rounder. I believe it was a third rounder, may have been a fourth rounder.
Yeah,
don't remember off the top of my head. But I mean, he went from obscure, because all of UCF's players were pretty obscure at the time, to someone people were talking about. And Nixon's not flying under the radar like Marshall was, but losing 6 weeks because of injury, really, really hurts his stock and being able to prove himself. So, when you think about it, aside from the potential combine, a potential pro day, which are not guaranteed, as we've seen this past year, maybe a college all-star game, also not guaranteed. Take what you can get. And if you can get a bowl game in there to showcase yourself a little bit more, you really have to take it.
Yeah, especially with the lack of game action, if you will. Comment about Hodges got torched tonight. Youth miscommunication. Talk about the secondary again there. Your thoughts on that? Yeah, there's Andrew's reaction. That says it all right there.
Hodges had a rough day. Derek Gaines had a rough day. Yeah, it was just the defensive backs were overcome by youth and inexperience and a lack of chemistry. Part of the problem when you have guys coming in is, you have to be able to communicate with each other, get on the same page, especially with shifting defenses. At times they were bringing safety up, and so you were playing, man defense with a single deep. If you're not aware of where players are going to be, you're going to be giving up, deep slants and crossing routes, and that's what was happening. I think a lot of it was just lack of communication, lack of practice between each other, a lack of chemistry, and that goes back to the fact that UCF really overachieved on their lack of depth. They could have ended up being a lot worse than they ended up being.
You mentioned the lack of depth. All right, so let's forward to 2021. For this defense to be good, they need what? Other than depth, obviously you've addressed that. But what in particular do you think they need on that side of the ball, and maybe in particular areas that they really need more depth in?
Well, I think a change of strategy. I'm not a big fan of running the nickel almost exclusively. I'm more of a 4-3 guy, at least in college. I like the 3-4, but that's hard to do in college. To find enough linebackers of enough strength and talent is difficult, but it's much easier to find big, strong defensive linemen who are fast. So I'm a big fan of the 4-3 defense. And, we look back at the Cincinnati game, they were bringing Aaron Robinson in up close as a third linebacker. At that point, you know what? Just put a third linebacker in and give yourself a more traditional defense.
Yeah, I think there's some schematically, I think there's going to be some things they're going to look into internally there on that. Speaking of guys, now we talk about guys that didn't play and the youth and they're missing. Another guy that didn't play that some people, many people actually thought was going to play is young Mackenzie Milton. There was a lot of hoopla.
That guy?
I've heard of him. Apparently he's a quarterback that played here recently, and some people thought he would play. I don't know. A few people are interested in his story. Obviously, the national, this has been a story 2 years in the making, if you will. Obviously, this was the scene where the same stadium where he got that horrific injury 2 years ago, and people didn't think he would come back. And obviously, he's been as running the scout team. And then this week, Dylan Gabriel said some things that kind of teased it, made it sound like Mackenzie might get a chance to play. And there was a lot of hoopla. The national media started jumping on this. Scott Van Pelt talked about this. There was a lot of people that jumped in there going into this game. And then, of course, our very own Brian Murphy was the first to break the story prior to the game that Mackenzie Milton would not play. The ESPN during the broadcast had a Mackenzie Milton quote. We'll get you that in a moment. But your thoughts leading in, because I'll give you credit. You wrote on the roundtable. You were the one guy. You weren't completely sold that Milton was going to play this game.
No, and I try to be very gentle about it to not raise the ire of everyone else. But I was not convinced at all that he was going to play. The truth is he hadn't played against live tackling. You run the scout team. It's all non-contact for him. You put him in a live tackle situation before he's 100% physically and mentally ready, something bad could happen. And I give Milton a lot of credit for recognizing that he was not feeling it. Because let's put it out there. This was a Milton decision. This was not a Heupel decision. This was not a Dylan Gabriel thing. This was nothing. This was a Mackenzie Milton decision that he did not feel ready to go out there. He's flat out said many times that he will not go out until he himself feels 100%. And as ESPN said, he felt maybe 85%. It's not 100. So he felt no need to go out there. It's at this point, it's for himself. He doesn't owe the fans any service. He's put in the work. He's fought hard. He doesn't owe anyone anything at this point except himself. And if he feels okay not coming out and playing, that's fine. But I was never really sold on it. And you know what? Call me a heartless, horrible monster. But I mean, I didn't get overly caught up in the story either. You know, I thought the Alex Smith story is great. That was cool. It was awesome. It's cool to see guys come back from that. But I was never over the top, emotionally driven over his comeback. I mean, it's inspiring. It's cool. You know, I've lived through my own, you know, joint massive surgeries and months to recover, you know, but I think Milton's really handled the pressure with a good head on his shoulders, of basically telling people, I have nothing to prove to you. I'll do it when I'm ready. And it would not surprise me at all. I'll take it even one step further, Eric. It would not surprise me if we never see him take a snap at UCF again.
I agree with that. Now, we're showing you the quote. This was during the ESPN broadcast, so this is what McKenzie Milton told ESPN. I haven't suited up all year, and I don't see the point in going out there today for sentimental reasons. For me, I don't want to go out there until 100% and playing at a high level. So there's no rush for me to get back out there on the field. That's been the basis of me suiting up all year. Am I 100%? Right now, I'm not. I think that's fair. I think that's dead on. I think the issue that people are going to have here, Andrew, and it's not McKenzie's fault at all. Let's paraphrase. Let's make that clear. This is not a McKenzie issue at all. I think some of the people were misled during the week that he might be playing. Like, this wasn't squashed saying, hey, he's not playing. You know, some people were maybe misinterpreted some things that were said during the week, during the pressers of media availabilities, etc. However you want to phrase it, there were people that believe in this. I'm not talking about just fans. I'm talking, Andrew, national media people. There were a lot of media that went to this game for this angle that was under the impression that he might play, and at least, if not play a significant role, maybe like take the last snap of the game, take a knee. Now, obviously, McKenzie in that quote, it's interesting. The thing that I took away there, he didn't want to do it for sentimental reasons. So I wonder, it sounds like perhaps they approached him with that idea. Hey, why don't we bring you in, and if the situation's right, we'll bring you in to take it. And he didn't want to do that. But this wasn't squashed going into this game. There were a lot of people waking up today thinking that McKenzie Milton was going to make a cameo, an appearance at some point or another. And that's the disappointing thing about this, because if they were announcing this Monday or Tuesday, hey, he's not available, he's not going to play, I think people would have been like, all right, we move on. But I think a lot of people's hopes were raised. And I'm not even just talking about sports fans. I think there's a lot of people that are caught up to this story beyond just football.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at our Knights roundtable ahead of the game, I mean, even then, you know, we weren't aware that McKenzie Milton wasn't going to play yet. And just read the responses. I mean, there was a lot of, well, I can't wait to see him on the field. It kind of dwarfed the rest of the game. The game itself became somewhat irrelevant because the McKenzie Milton story took over. It could have easily been squashed. Someone should have done it. The let it go as far as it did, someone really screwed up here.
That's my disappointment. That's my disappointment there, Andrew. It's not that he didn't play. He doesn't owe, and he's a success story, whether he takes another snap here, elsewhere, ever, whatever. He's walking. He's fine. That's a successful story in the big picture. So let's not lose that. I think, but there's people that have emotional ties to this for a variety of reasons that were, I know people were texting me, Andrew, you know this because we were talking prior to the game. There were people blowing my phone up that spent a ton of money going to this game because they thought he was going to appear and make an appearance. And they were asking me, what do you mean he's not playing? Is he not going to appear? Because they were led to believe that was the case, whether that was on purpose or not. And I don't think it was. I don't think anybody misled anybody on purpose. But the fact that so many people were led to this idea is unfortunate.
Yeah, I don't think it was malicious at all. I think someone dropped the ball. I think Dylan Gabriel got a little overexcited, and maybe earlier in the week there was talks about it before it got ultimately crushed. But the truth is, this wasn't a recent decision. This wasn't something that happened this morning. This decision was already in the books some time ago. Don't know exactly when, but it wasn't recent. So, I mean, someone should have said something. And while I know coaches don't like to tip their hand at their depth chart and other stuff, but I mean, Milton would have been third on the depth chart to begin with. I don't think this would have been, really tipping the hand per se. I think this would have been, more of a courtesy than anything else. Because you're right, there are a lot of people who feel emotionally invested in Mackenzie's story, and it's a great story of coming back from adversity, of faith. A lot of faith-driven people find encouragement and solace in the fact that his, while shaken, never was broken. So a lot of people do have an emotional connection. And I can't speak for them, but I'm pretty sure they feel really let down right now. Yeah, the win's nice, but the guy I did spend money on to go see never did anything on the field with pads on, and I thought he was going to. I could see that to be a very, very emotionally driven response.
You see there, I posted Brian Murphy getting Heupel's thoughts on Milton. Heupel says Milton's return to the field is taken day by day, week by week, and KZ is in control of that process, which I think is great, by the way. I think that's a good thing. Heupel adds he can't imagine what kind of emotions Milton was feeling today walking back into that stadium. I know, I think Brian tweeted this out, and there was photos on social media about him taking a knee among his teammates, Tatum Bethune and among others, at the 26-yard line on the very same spot where he got injured 2 years ago. So clearly it was on his mind and things like that. Again, I don't have an issue with him not playing a snap. I just think the message could have been delivered better because there is a lot of sensitivity about this. There are people that and that's the unfortunate thing about it. And I don't want to get into what's going to happen to him down the road. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Is he going to be here? Is he not going to be here? That's for him to decide that. But he has nothing to prove in that regard. And it's just unfortunate at how this played out because there was a lot of angst. There was a lot of angst, Andrew. There was a lot of angst prior to that game. Do you think – let me ask you this. Do you think the players thought he was going to play or be available today at any point, or do you think they knew all along? And the reason I ask it is, do you think this played a factor in how they performed? The fact that they knew he wasn't available maybe took some of the balloons out, whereas if they knew he was going to be available to maybe come in for a series, they would have been inspired more. That's just a rhetorical question, hypothetical. What's your thoughts on that? Because some people have asked that.
I don't think so. I don't think that him not playing because it wasn't a recent decision. I'm pretty sure the players were aware because the issue in the game adjusting didn't seem to be an adjustment due to personnel from a quarterback standpoint. It seemed to be more of an adjustment of personnel with the lack of Otis Anderson and Marlon Williams, particularly Marlon Williams, since Otis and Greg McCray are pretty interchangeable as far as core running back duties. I think that's where the real issue was because he still put up 58 points, so the offense still operated pretty normally. I'm sure they would have been more inspired if he played, but I don't think they were less inspired to play.
Let's get back to some of the comments and questions on our board here. Again, you can follow us. Make sure you subscribe and like us here on our YouTube page here on the Night Shift post game here. UCF winners. We did win the game. They did win the game. I know it does not feel like a win. I feel like we've had a lot of negative talk here. We got some more questions here. Let me move him up here. Robert Lowry chiming in. The sophomores across the D line, Flash, Cam, Dollar, Landon, but we don't get consistent pressure. Do you think this can be developed, or does Shannon's good quote unquote recruiter, or is he a good recruiter, need to bring more talent in up front? Your thoughts on that, Andrew, in response to Robert's question there about not getting enough consistent pressure from that D line?
Well, it's true. They haven't been putting enough consistent pressure. I think, losing, Stephon Zayas didn't play today, but I know he's been kind of shuffled back in the lineup. But that's another body that can't rotate in. Part of the problem is, when you have the ball for long periods of time, you need that ability to rotate defenders in, give the others a spell. And we're not seeing that because there's just no one to bring in. I think the sophomores have a lot of room to develop, a lot of room to grow. That really comes down to the strength and conditioning program, which has historically been pretty good at UCF. That's one of the things, even during the O'Leary days, has always been pretty good, is the developmental program between strength and conditioning. But he's not wrong. You obviously need more horses. This year really exposed a big hole in UCF's game plan, especially when you have a fast offense. You actually need more defense to make up for the fact of they're going to be on the field a lot more. They're going to tire out. And you need to sell the fact that you rotate a lot so you get playing time, because it's going to be hard to get quality guys in the building, to create that depth when they're going to want playing time. But there's a way to sell that.
Yeah, there's certainly some way to solve that. More questions about KZ. They say, can he have 2 years left? Medical redshirt, absolutely reasonable, because he didn't play this year. He would have 2 years. And then some people bringing up the fact, couldn't he be able to play? Could he play next year? Sure, right? Like there is something to be said, right? The good news for him is he's got now, you hope, 9 months, right, to get even better if he wants to play. But that doesn't mean he's going to play here, because he's also got the option he could transfer if he wants to. I want to say he's close to graduating and has all his degrees pretty much lined up. I could be wrong on that, but I think he's pretty close from what I understand. What do you think? Do you think we ever see McKenzie here at UCF, or do you think transferring is possibly the destination? Or maybe it's a little bit of, hey, I'm just done playing. I'm going to get it. I know he's talked about getting into coaching. I do think that's where he's headed, one way or the other, whether he plays or doesn't play.
Well, he's going to ultimately end up in coaching, but he definitely has said that he wants to get back on the field and play. That's been a lot of his motivation in pushing in this rehab. It's not an easy job to rehab from a massive reconstruction like he had. You obviously need a carrot in front of you, and the play to be able to play has been his. So I think he still wants to play. The problem is he can't really do it at UCF. Dylan Gabriel, this is his team. Let's be honest. Milton is a smarter quarterback than Gabriel. Gabriel is a more physically gifted quarterback than Milton. There's no argument on that. The video speaks for itself. However, this is Gabriel's team, and the numbers he's put up, the results he's done. How do you bench that? How do you take him out? Gabriel will just redshirt. If I was Gabriel, no, I wouldn't redshirt. It's my career I'm thinking about too. I wouldn't want to take a back seat on that. Here's the truth. And it goes back to a quote. I've said it many times, but I think Mackenzie Milton also hit it pretty well. Sentimentality. Here's the truth. Sentimentality doesn't win games. Talent wins games. And the best guy should play. And right now, the best guy is Dylan Gabriel. So if you want to play and you're stuck behind Dylan Gabriel, your one option is to either, you have one option to try and unseat him, which I don't see it happening. The other option is go somewhere else. And I think that's where he'll go for one more year. At that point, he can then turn his attention to coaching. He'll have the one more year of eligibility. Remember, just because you have the extra year of eligibility doesn't mean that you have to use it. You have to still be a student, going to school, working on degrees. If he's done with that, and I can't say for certain, then obviously the extra eligibility doesn't mean anything. You can't just have it without being a student, getting degrees and whatnot. You can be going for your master's, you can be going for your PhD, whatever, but you still have to be going for something. So just because there's an extra year doesn't mean anything.
I agree. If he's going to play, it's probably going to be somewhere else. This is Dylan Gabriel's your starting quarterback going into next year, period. I think if you asked an NFL scout, they would tell you that Dylan Gabriel's the better prospect. That's not even a question. So if you're McKenzie, then the tricky thing too is, can he find a spot where he knows he could play? That's not going to be a guarantee either, because I know some people might say, well, maybe he goes to Ole Miss. Well, their quarterback Corral's a sophomore. Lane Kiffin, there's no guarantee he would play there either. Can he find a spot that he could play? There's one spot, and I know people don't want to hear it. Now, you and I have gone back and forth on this. A place like Nebraska. You're more sold on the quarterbacks at Nebraska than I am. You don't think he could play there either.
I'm more sold on McCaffrey and the fact that, remember, he's still developing. He's young, but his physical upside is just tremendous. And I think they're going to ride him. Here's the truth. If Mackenzie Milton wants a good opportunity to start, he's probably going to have to look away from the P5. Here's the truth. He doesn't have any on-field video, film experience since the injury. Schools are definitely going to hold their breath a little bit, putting him on the field. He's one hit away from losing a leg. Even though he's been healed and he's worked and he's rehabbed, you still have a tendency to get re-injured. I mean, I know from experience. I've had both of my shoulders reconstructed and had my labrums turned into literal Swiss cheese. And even later in life, after both are rebuilt, I went through the rehab and everything, I've still had issues with them. And it's going to dog him forever. So while there may be, the rehab and the healing, he's one hit away from being crippled. And while that may not scare him off from doing it, it may scare schools off from putting a scholarship out on him, because not only does that scholarship bring him in, but they also have to take the medical liability that comes with it. And you're looking at a huge liability risk from a medical standpoint with Milton on your team.
What about Hawaii? You mentioned you don't think it's a Power 5. Hawaii, full circle, go back home. Could that be a destination? And again, this is all speculative, obviously, but would that be something
I think that's an intriguing spot. Go home, play in front of your friends and family. The extended family that didn't move to Florida. I would see nothing wrong. To be honest, I wouldn't be mad if he went anywhere, because he's going to do for him. He's already put his blood, sweat, and tears and leg on the field for UCF. He owes no one here anything. I just want him to be successful and go wherever it takes to get there.
And if he right. And if he wants to stay, that's great too. It's whatever he decides. Nobody should be, whatever decision he decides, it's his decision, and everybody should support it. He's done more than enough here, right?
And no one should be blamed if he leaves.
Right.
You can't blame, Josh Heupel if he leaves. It's not his fault.
No.
The injury was an accident, pure accident. There was no way you could have, recreated that if he spun the wheel for misfortune. That would be really difficult to put back together, because two guys hit him, one high, one low, defensive lineman pulling him down from his shoulders, defensive back taking his leg, and it got planted down because he was being pulled down from behind up top. That's you can't replicate that. And that's why it drives me nuts when people are like, oh, well, they did it intentionally. There's no way that could have been intentional. It was a freak accident. And you can tell by the way the players reacted that no one wanted a guy's leg nearly severed, internally. The other truth is, because of the rehab and the work that goes into it, Josh Heupel's job is to put the best players on the field to win, and that's Dylan Gabriel. Prove me otherwise. What's the Crowder meme? Change my mind. Yeah, Dylan Gabriel is not the best quarterback at UCF. Change my mind. You got to do what's best for the program, not a single player. As again, sentimentality doesn't win games.
And Dylan was on pace. I wrote about this on blackandgoldbannerhead.com. He was on pace to have one of the three greatest seasons any quarterback's ever had in the program history. This was up there with 2017 Milton, 2008 Culpepper. I'll have to look at the final numbers to see how it stacks up, but it's going to be pretty close to that. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well. I mean, you're in good shape at quarterback without question. I mean, I don't think there's even any question about that. I put up right now, Brian Murphy still working the post game. Landon Woodson said the defensive struggles were due to poor communication rather than anything USF offense was doing. That was Landon Woodson on the post game there. Your thoughts on that?
Say that? Didn't we say communication was an issue?
We did mention that. Just a tad.
It was very obvious that players were not on the same page. And football's a mental game. despite what people think. And what it looks like on the surface, where you see guys hitting each other. It's a mental game. If you're not mentally prepared properly or handling that side, you're not going to do well. And this was the case. UCF's defense was athletically superior, but were routinely out of position and making bad cuts and bad reads. That's a mental failure. And I think Woodson hit it just right. They didn't communicate.
I just heard from Brian, by the way. He'll be joining us in about 15 minutes. They're finally wrapping up post-game. Just like the game. It was a lengthy post-game, very understandable. So we are
a 4.5 hour game. Gee, what a marathon.
Unbelievable. What did you think of the whole telecast overall there? I mentioned this on the podcast. UCF has not lost a game when Roy Philpott and Kelly Stauffer do the game. We stay undefeated, baby, with those guys.
I thought the quality of what they said was fine. I did laugh at the part where it was painfully obvious that the audio and video sync for Philpott were off. His video was delayed. There was net delays. I mean, right afterwards, the Oregon State game comes on, and you can tell on the big Oregon touchdown run that there was a delay in the feed because the announcer was just way behind on getting excited. And you have to laugh. This is just the world we live in right now. This is the COVID world where the majority of games are going to be broadcast from home, where production is going to be remote, and you just have to kind of deal with the good and the bad that comes with that. And you just have to laugh at it because, these guys are trying. I know a lot of people, oh, these announcers stink, blah, blah, blah. They're trying. We're all trying. We're trying to get there. We're trying to give it a good product. And, sorry it's not our best. We'll try harder next time.
By the way, thanks to COSEG Advisory, he did confirm that McKenzie has graduated. He can definitely transfer and has likely 2 years of eligibility. He mentioned that if he gets a medical red shirt on that. So, I look, we'll see what happens with that story. I mean, it is what it is. It's still going to be played out. The good news is he's making progress, and we'll see. I mean, let me ask you this. If they play in the bowl game, do you think he has a shot? Do you think do they put him in a bowl game? Do you think this is a 2021 thing?
I think it's a 2021 thing at this point. If you didn't feel ready to go out against, USF, right, the rival, in the place where you got hurt, why on earth are you going to do it at the Boca Raton Bowl against Podunk State University? I don't think I think at this point he's done for the year. He'll do his part for practice and off season stuff, but I don't think he's suiting up this year.
I agree with you, but I'll play devil's advocate for you here. Let's say UCF ends up at the Cure Bowl and not the Boca Bowl. Think of the symmetry here. If they go to the Cure Bowl, the last time UCF was there, McKenzie was a freshman, got booed in the game against Arkansas State because he struggled. Wouldn't that be something if full circle you play in the Cure Bowl, McKenzie comes into a roaring ovation from whoever's in the building there? That could kind of be a little full circle. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but just a little, just try to leave a little crack of the door there.
Well, he'd get a stand ovation from the 800 fans that are in attendance for a combination of COVID and the fact that it's also going to be against the Podunk Institute of Technology. We already know UCF fans are not feeling really inspired based on the bowls that they're eligible for. We have a laundry list of them that we've been doing our bowl projections for, because this year is the first year of the new bowl contract, which is more about conference pooling than it is about individual bowls. There's actually only 3 games that the American has guaranteed bowl spots for. Everything else is based on pools that they're guaranteed at least 4 spots for. It's definitely a very different world that we're in, and that would have been regardless of COVID. But the American did their bowl contracts with geography in mind. They want mitigate expense, because the less expense, the more money the conference makes. The more money the conference makes, the more money the schools make, because they pool everything together. So if Navy plays in the Military Bowl, UCF plays in the Boca, Gasparilla, or Cure Bowl, that's more money that goes into the coffers of the conference, which benefits the schools. It's not just UCF, it's not just USF, it's everyone. So if everyone kind of does their part and play in a more regionalized bowl game, even if they're not all that attractive, that financially the conference wins. And it's kind of a no-win situation, because either you win financially or you win on the matchup side. But I mean, the truth is, the Power 5 conferences by and large wanted to keep their bowl games exclusive, and the bowls went along with it. And even though the American still has an in to the Gasparilla, it's a pooled game now between the American, the SEC, and the ACC. There's no guarantee UCF or any American team goes to the Gasparilla Bowl this year. It could easily be an ACC-SEC game, which I think is going to be the case, especially with the Pinstripe Bowl being canceled, which just means there's one less option, and that just makes the two other Florida Bowls even more of an option.
So 6-3. Give me your positives and negatives of this 9-game season. We'll put the bowl game aside for now. Just through this, now that we're through 9 games. And first of all, let me just say this. Huge success off the field getting these 9 games in with really no interruptions. Not a lot of programs could say that. I mean, look at the mess that the Pac-12 is dealing with. The Big Ten has had some cancellations. There's been disruptions across the country. UCF's one of the few teams that's been able to play all their scheduled games on schedule. I know they lost the game before the season even started with FIU, but I'm talking about once the season kicked off. I think that's been a big success that they were able to get these 9 games in. Do you agree?
I think so. I mean, the truth is UCF was the only American Athletic Conference team to not have a game disrupted from COVID. And any issue that UCF had was very isolated and was taken care of, obviously, because they didn't have any disrupted games. It sucks that UCF lost the opportunity to play FIU before the season ever started, because FIU chose to delay the start of their season till just past it. And they couldn't find any takers that worked out as far as adding games to the schedule. So you just played with what you had. And a 9-game schedule, that's short, and it makes those 3 losses hurt even more. In reality, in a normal schedule, if they were able to add a couple more games, I think they would have ended up still with the 3 losses. They would have had just a couple more wins, and it would have been a lot more palatable. But it could have been a lot worse. I mean, Wisconsin's had enough canceled games that they're not even eligible for a conference championship game. UCF lost games, but you know what? This season was a bit of a wash. Strange things happen. UCF had a lot of players opt out before the season started, including a handful from their 2 deep, a couple starters, and they were already playing behind the 8 ball, and that hurt them. Going in the season, that was one reason why they got hurt in the post-COVID polls. It was one reason why a lot of pundits poo-pooed them a little bit, because they saw what ended up happening before it happened, where lack of depth started playing an ugly role. I mean, would I love to see the schedule rearranged a little bit? Sure. I think if the same team that played against Cincinnati played against Tulsa or Memphis, we would have had a very different outcome, change in outcome. They were mentally tougher. They were they didn't have as much experience issues. They were a lot more efficient, and I don't think that it would have been quite the same. It wouldn't have ended up the same way. But you play the schedule in which you were given, and it's just the way it worked out.
Your thoughts on the field? How do you kind of look at this 6-3 season on the field?
Well, I mean, I look at it from the win in the standpoint of all 9 games were played. They were played when they were supposed to be played. The offense did what they were supposed to do. The defense struggled, and that was partly why I've always said the season's a bit of a wash. I had a feeling that it was going to struggle. You lose 2 starters off the bat and another couple within the 2 deep before you even take a snap. Obviously, they're part of the 2 deep for a reason, and the fact you don't have them hurts. And it gives an opportunity to build towards 2021. I mean, I'm actually really excited about 2021 because you have the possibility of bringing some of these players back, but the players that have stepped up, they got a lot of valuable experience. that doesn't go away. We can even look at the offensive side. You talked about last time Mackenzie Milton played in the Citrus Bowl. Remember, he was a true freshman that year, and look at his progression from freshman to sophomore year. The game time and the game film that he was able to study and learn from, that helps. That helps a lot. And I think from that aspect, the season was a success, not for this year, but for next year.
I think the thing we'll think about, and I wonder your thoughts on this. I don't think anybody will be bothered by the Cincinnati loss. Cincinnati was the better team. You could argue they probably were a 10-point better team if they would have decided to score at the end there. I think the losses that's going to bother, think about is that Memphis loss and the Tulsa game. You're up 23-5 at home in the second half, or early in that late first, I'd say. 18-point lead at home. Don't hold on to. Held to 3 points in the second half. The Memphis game, you're up 21 at one point. Can't hold on to that lead. If you win those two games, you're still in the mix for the conference championship. In fact, you're probably playing Cincinnati again for the championship. I think those things, it's kind of a what if type of deal there. A couple plays here and there. That's the thing. It's like, just a couple of those sequences there. If they could have just executed better in those second halves in the fourth quarters, that's how close this could have been. This could have been easily an 8-1 going on 9-1 top 25 season with a chance to play for New Year's 6. That close. But yet, so far as they say, as you know, Bill Parcells always said, you are what your record says you are.
Well, yeah, and look at 2017, against, South Florida, against Memphis the second time. Look at 2018 against Memphis both times. It's one or two bounces away from a completely different season in both times. Same in 2019, a couple bounces away from a very different season. 2020 was no different. A couple bounces away from a very different season. That's just how football is. A lot of times it's a very close game that's just one or two plays or makes all the difference. The big interception in Cincinnati was really what killed them. That's a single play. The 4th and 1 bone run, the big bone run in Memphis in 2018. That's a single play, but it made the difference. And that's just the way it is. And this even goes before Heupel, before Frost. Remember 2013 Memphis, UCF's losing. They tie the game.
Yeah, they got some lucky breaks in 2013. Win some close games and so we got plenty of time. We got plenty of time there, but sitting patiently right there. Look at this guy. We didn't get Mackenzie Milton today. We didn't get a defensive performance today, but darn it, we got Brian Murphy. It just salvaged my night. Murph live from Raymond James, home of Super Bowl 55 and potentially WrestleMania down next year as well. Look at him right there. Murph, I know it's been a long night. I promise we won't keep you on as long. So we'll just cut to the chase. Let's first start with the post game. What was the reaction to that game? And in particular, defensively, a lot of people have been, obviously, as you can imagine, not happy with the defensive performance. Oh, we hear you, Murph? Oh, we don't hear you, Murph.
Hear me now?
Now I hear you. There you go.
All right. I'll take the headphones out. I'll just take the headphones on and slam it on the ground.
Do it live. All
right, we'll do it live.
I muted myself earlier during the live, so it's all good.
We'll do it live. Anyway, no, it's fine. I'm on a sidewalk. Who cares? You weren't going to get great answers to that because we got to talk to Josh Heupel and then three offensive players and one defensive player. We're not talking to any coordinators on defense. We're not talking to Randy Shannon or Shane Burnham or Willie Martinez. And Heupel's never going to give you great answers about the defense. I think the only glimmer of insight we got was from Landon Woodson, who had some 3 sacks tonight. But I just asked him, what caused you guys problems there in the second half, where there were a lot of defensive breakdowns and they got a lot of yards on you. And he basically said it wasn't anything that USF was doing. It was just poor communication between the players that are on the defense, and that the guy here didn't know what the other guy next to him was doing, and it was just poor communication. And obviously the joke with that is there's nobody in the stands. How can you have poor communication when there's no one in the stands? But there's a lot of young players out there. Guys, if you look at the defense lineup for most of the night, you had obviously you had Richie Grant, right? But you had a lot of freshmen, a lot of sophomores. So I get it, but Yeah, it was not
the
good.
107th ranked offense. They gave up 46 to. They gave up more points in this game. They gave up more points than they did in the 2017 Classic with Quentin Flowers. That's all I got to say with that. All right, let me ask you this. All right, Murph, let me ask you this then. Let's talk about the bigger story before the game. Mackenzie Milton not playing. Yeah. Been a lot of chatter. Your reaction to that, and what have you been able to find out since?
Well, I'll be honest. In the moment, I was outraged. Outraged. I wanted Milton. We all wanted Milton.
Everybody.
So, look, it made the game feel a lot more insignificant. However, obviously reading McKenzie's statement at halftime, which I feel bad because he didn't need to put out that statement. That statement tells us what we already knew about McKenzie. McKenzie has said in May of this year, he said in November of last year, I'm not coming back until I'm 100% healthy, until he knows that he's 100%. And so that statement tells me nothing. I feel bad that he had to put it out there because you at UCF didn't do anything to tamp down the anticipation and to tamp down the hype that was building after Dylan Gabriel's comments on Monday. But Josh Heupel tonight after the game was asked about it and said basically that it's KZ's call all the way and that it's all taken very day-to-day, week-to-week. And so if you want to give Heupel the benefit of the doubt and say, well, maybe on Tuesday, he wasn't medically cleared and he wasn't going to play, but possibly things could have changed. Like, I know that's far-fetched and it's probably not even true, but if you want to give Heupel the benefit of the doubt of being really coy about all this, that's what you could say. Ultimately, though, it's all KZ. He does not feel ready to play, and if he doesn't feel ready to play at the very highest level, at like the old KZ, he's not going to do it. He's not going to go out there because it's an anniversary or sentimentality reasons and play. And I know this game meant a lot to him. Being in the stadium meant a lot to him. He prayed at the 26-yard line where he got hurt pregame, along with Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste and Tatum Bethune, a couple linebackers. So I know being here tonight was important for him and very, very emotional, but that didn't mean that he was going to play or ever play. And I just feel bad that, we all got ourselves worked up for nothing.
And that includes the national media. And I think you could speak to this. There was a lot of media in that press box. What was the reaction in the press box once you broke the story and everybody confirmed it that he wasn't playing?
Well, people are pissed. People are upset. This is why people are tuning in to watch this game. They were not tuning in to watch 5-3 UCF versus 1-7 USF. They were not watching a football game. They were here to watch a feel-good story of one of the best players in the sport returning to his level, reintroducing himself to college football at the place where his career changed, where his life changed. So it was just, I got it. No, it's good. I'm good. So it was just it was anticlimactic, really, that happened. And it's just too bad. But I think after a while, I kind of calmed down. Like, I was very upset. Like, there are people in the press box who were like, I don't even need to be here now. I can just leave. Why am I even here? But I understand it. And, yeah, it's just too bad. I know we were really pulling for it. A lot of people were.
A lot of people were. Last question, I promise, and we'll get you out of here on this. We posted your tweet that Josh Heupel says he doesn't think this will be his last game. So what do you read into that? Do you think this team plays at a bowl game? And how many players do you think today played their last game as a Knight?
Yeah, that's a good question. So obviously, well, yes, to answer the first question, yeah, I do. I guess now this team is going to go to a bowl game. And that does surprise me a little bit because their options aren't that great. And financially, in this climate, you need to save money. And I don't know how those bowls kind of work out for you financially. But it does seem like UCF will go to a bowl game. So maybe it's the Boca Raton Bowl. Maybe it's the Cure Bowl. But as far as who doesn't play, well, I can almost guarantee you that the guys who didn't play today are not going to play then. Because why would you do that? So Marlon Williams or Otis Anderson, we're not sure what's up with either of them really, but I would not expect them to play. I'll say this: Aaron Robinson spent most of the second half on the sideline without his helmet for reasons I'm not sure. Again, it's pointless asking Josh Heupel about injuries right now because he just or ever, but certainly right now he just won't give it to you. So we don't know why Aaron was on the sidelines, but I would be surprised if he played. Richie Grant played the whole game, which kind of surprised me. But what does he gain out of playing in the Boca Raton Bowl? Like nothing. So those guys I certainly would not expect to play. And then the other question is for like seniors, like we asked Jacob Harris tonight, has he thought about maybe coming back next year? Like Jake Hescock has already said he's coming back. And Jacob has just said he's worried about this game and he'll worry about that later and all that stuff. But for those guys going forward, I wonder the Trey Nixons, the Jacob Harrises, those guys, are they looking at are they looking at taking the extra year, or are they looking at going away? Because there's some guys certainly that are going to move on from here, but there's some guys who are sort of in that area of like, well, they want to maybe help their stock a little bit. I know it'd be like their 5th or 6th year in college, but they could play another year in college football if they want to do that. But I guess those are things we'll find out in the weeks to come.
Yeah. Andrew, you got any questions before we let Brian go and get ready back on that I-4 drive back?
I mean, he kind of hit it all, especially with the amount.
Look how fired up! I've never heard Murph so fired up in my life. He is fired up, brother. I mean, how much coffee do you have on your system today? You have to have a bunch.
I only had 1 cup, dude. We didn't have water for most of the game. It was like Mad Max Fury Road. We didn't have water.
What are we doing? What's going on over there? What's going on?
I don't know.
Like Bright House Network Stadium when they first opened. There's no water.
There's no water.
Oh my God. All right. All right. You mentioned Jacob Harris. I want to mention Jacob Harris because we've kind of ignored him here, unfortunately, because as you imagine, Murph, there's been a lot of negative questions out here. He was a tremendous today. What did you think of his performance? Because in a lot of ways, USF had no answer for him, and he was the difference.
This is what Jacob Harris can do, right? Jacob is a big body who's got some good body awareness skills. He can move in the air. And when you just loft the ball up there, he's a big mismatch because he's 6'7". He kind of, he wears 87. So he's got that it kind of looks like Gronk down by the goal line. He's got that size. The problem for Jacob has just been he's so raw. He's only been playing wide receiver for like 4 or 5 years now. And really, because he was a soccer player when he got to college first before he transferred to UCF. So it's just a matter of him learning the game. But when you give him a chance, he can win a lot of those 50-50 balls. And you saw that tonight. I mean, his first touchdown when he got in the back of the end zone, it's just a great play over a smaller DB. He can win those kind of balls. Another thing, too, that he has to continue to work on are his hands. His hands have been inconsistent since last year. So, but the physical tools are there. He is an interesting guy for me because, yes, he's a redshirt senior. And who knows? Not all these guys really maybe want to go to the pros, the NFL. Maybe they want to go, I don't know, get like an actual job, like leave college and get a real job. But for Jacob, like if he wanted to come back for his 6th year, I could definitely see that happening if he really wanted to work on being a better football player because he needs another year of seasoning if he really wants to try it. But he was great tonight, just a big target. And when you give him a window above his head, no one's going to break up that pass. He's too big. He's too tall.
Real quick before you go, another player that really stood out that's been kind of buried on the depth chart a little bit was Bentavious Thompson. Had himself a monster of a game. In fact, while he didn't outgain Greg McCray, I think he played a better game than Greg McCray overall. And McCray had an outstanding game himself. How do you see him developing as a more bruiser back? Because that's obviously how they were using him tonight.
That's what he is, right? He is not an explosive finesse back. He is, a one cut and go guy in the middle of the hashes. But you could see that kind of late in the game. He got some bigger chunk runs, and he doesn't have great speed, but he just is hard to bring down. He did say that Otis called him yesterday and told him he's got to step up, he's got to play physical, he's got to play fast and hard. And he admitted that Otis not being here was kind of rough, but certainly you'll take 2 touchdowns from your third string running back any day of the week. It's kind of, again, it talks to the depth that this team has still. I mean, I know people are being negative. I'll switch topics real quickly. I know people are being negative about the defense. And look, there's plenty to be negative about. I get it. But if you look at all the freshmen and sophomores that are out there, like there's potential here. There really is with like guys like Trayvon Morris-Brash and Tatum Bethune, Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste, all the corners on the outside. The transfers like Devod Wilson, who just got in here, who had a pretty nice game. There's a lot of pieces here that, yes, are going to be back next year. People are like, well, they're going to be the same guys. They're going to be back. Like, no, they'll be a year older, a year more experienced, a year more seasoned. And for guys like, I love Trayvon Morris Brash, man. He is the issue with him has always been just up here between the ears and just being in shape. Like, they'll admit, like, he wasn't in shape when he got into camp. It's been really hard for him to stay in shape. But when he just is like stays on straight and narrow, he's so good. He's such a good pass rusher. He's got great moves, great speed, really hard to block because of his low center of gravity. He's an absolute stud. So those are your building blocks for going forward. And people are going to have to really, really put up with that. I know it probably sucks now because people are like, well, they gave up 600 yards to a one-win team. I'm like, I get it. But, you know, there are going to be changes. We understand there's going to be changes. I'm sure you guys already talked about the changes in the defense as far as the coordinator. Like, that's already been talked about. That's
Andrew
going to happen.
He basically said it's calling for a schematic change there. Andrew's on fired, baby.
I mean, it's going to happen. I mean, it's not even that big of a deal at this point. It's going to happen. Like, can you really afford at this point to pay Randy Shannon $1 million? Probably not.
Yeah, I
think
think
it made sense when he was brought in. You know, Florida paid the majority of his salary the first 2 years. I mean, UCF got him for very little. And then this year they had to pay him the big chunk of change. It made sense. But, you know, the contract expired. You can't justify, you know, a school with the budget that UCF has paying an assistant $1 million, especially when the product just hasn't been what you were expecting it to be.
No. So there'll be changes, but a lot of these guys that are playing now, the people are ragging on, like, guess what? They're going to come back. And you're going to learn to grow with them. They are. This is who they have, and you see glimpses of things like not only just Trayvon, but I love Tatum Bethune. I think he's great. I think the corners are going to be good. Justin Hodges had a really, really tough day today, but Corey Thornton's gotten better as the season has gone along. I don't know what happened to Devontae Brown today. He played maybe one series and then didn't come back. I'm not sure what happened there, but there's a lot of freshmen out there. They're going to get better. And people are going to have to, you know, live with the ups and downs of being a young player. Sorry.
I'm excited. I know you were busy doing Murph things, but as Eric and I talked about, I'm excited about the defense for next year from a talent standpoint. I think that's where a major silver lining in the struggles of this year is those guys got a valuable experience, you know, in the game that'll come back to them threefold, and you know, for next year.
And you can see like guys like, and now I'm just thinking more guys like Cam Good. Like when he wants to go, when he has his motor going, he's really good because he's, again, low center of gravity, really hard to get leverage on him. And he's a redshirt sophomore, I believe. So again, these guys are going to be around next year, and people may not like to hear it, but these guys are going to get better. And this offense is always going to be good because you're going to always be able to recruit athletes because of the scheme, the success here. It's Florida. People are going to want to play in that offense. It's about recruiting your defense, and we don't know these guys are finished products yet. They're not finished products yet. You got to give them some time, and I know there's going to be some rough nights. Like tonight was a very rough night. It'll get better. Don't worry.
The cover is not bare, is your point. The cover is not bare.
No, absolutely.
So the Knights win. That's Brian Murphy there at Raymond James joining us there. Brian, thank you so much for joining. It's been a long day and night. I know you got to drive ahead there. Unless you want to stick around, you know, Mahomes and Brady are going to play in that same stadium on Sunday.
You know what's so funny? They were setting. They kind of were already setting up for Sunday's game in the press box. Of course they are. They were putting like the coffee stuff out, and I'm like, oh, I'm dead serious. They're putting like the coffee stuff out. I'm like, oh, you're gonna have coffee here? I'm like, no. I'm like, what do you mean no? You're setting up all the creamers and sugars and stuff. What's happening? Another tease.
They got to get Jim Nance ready, man. You got to get Jim Nance's coffee ready, Murph. You know Jim Nance needs his coffee. Him and Roma are going to be there. You know, you got to take care of them.
Today was all about teases. It was all a big tease today.
It is.
How does it be second rate?
Unbelievable. All right, Murph, we'll let you go. Have safe travels there, man. Great work. We'll send you back and good stuff, and we'll see you back here at home.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Take it easy, bud. Brian Murphy joining us from Raymond James. We gotta let him go, man. It's not. It's night. Yeah, it's late night there in Tampa. I don't trust. You know, I've been there many a times for Monday night games. I rather get him home safely, and that's what we have the podcast for. He'll share more thoughts on that later in the week. I'm going to leave you one last question that's just chimed in here before we sign off, Andrew. Christian writes in, where do you think this team stands at this time next year?
I mean,
that's a big question. Maybe not a good night to answer that, right?
The problem is we don't know exactly what direction Josh Heupel and Danny White are going to go with the defensive side of the ball. I expect a personnel change. I'm expecting that. The question is, where do they go? I'm not 100% sure. I think they'll be better than 6-3. Well, let's stretch it out to the fact that it'll be 12 games, but I think they'll be better than a 2/3 win percentage. The offense is still going to be very much a force, with or without Trey Nixon, because obviously we're not quite sure what he's going to do. We know Marlon Williams is pretty much all but gone. We're pretty sure that Otis Anderson's all but gone. I wouldn't be surprised if Greg McCrae's gone, but you look at the offensive side. You're still going to have Dylan Gabriel. You have an offensive line that's going to be a little more seasoned, that needed some work, that needed time. They'll be a little bit better. You have, Bentavious Thompson. You have Demarius Good. You have Cole's coming back. Should be back from injury. He's missed all year with what was it, an Achilles injury? And on the defensive side, you have a lot of young guys who've got valuable experience this year. I'm excited about next year. I kind of wrote off to 2020 pretty early on, and Eric, you can attest that I did that. I didn't take this year very seriously. This was always about 2021, and I think that's a year that UCF can make a really strong run, even with some of the attrition that they're going to suffer on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I think they'll still be one of the favorites in the American. They bring back a lot of personnel that you brought up. Cincinnati loses a lot of guys on that defense. They're very veteran-oriented, so they're going to be a favorites. Tricky schedule, open with Boise State, go to Louisville, I believe, if I recall the schedule as well. Memphis comes to Orlando, so it's a trickier schedule. It's a tough schedule, but like you said, man, I got to see. There's a lot of, there's going to be a lot of moves, either with coaching changes or no coaching changes, transfer portals. Guys could be coming and going, so it's too early to kind of figure this out at this point, but they should be good, right? They should be good, as I just mentioned before. Merv, the cover is not bare, and there's just some tweaking that has to be done. It's not the end of the world. Nobody, in that regard, it's just some tweaks have to. I think they know that. I think everybody in there, they want to get back to winning that conference championship and being in that mix. I don't think they're satisfied with just a 6-3 season internally at all.
No one should be satisfied with 6-3, inside the locker room, especially when you had ones that were, single plays away from making a difference. But the truth is, you win some, you lose some, and that's the natural order of things. You can't win them all, and you're not going to always get the lucky break. And players know that, but they don't let it consume them either. You learn from the mistake, but you don't dwell on the mistake, because if you dwell on it, it distracts you from making plays in the future. So I'm very confident in the emotional development of the players, as well as the coaching staff being able to help them along to get over those humps of those losses. But I'm excited. You're right; it's a challenging schedule, but you know what? A challenging schedule is necessary if you want to make a national splash. If you want to be the man, you have to beat the man. And if you don't play a tough schedule, it doesn't matter what you do. And that's something that dogged UCF a little bit this year with losing North Carolina on the schedule. No one's fault. I mean, that was a COVID casualty, and there was nothing that could have been done about it. And I don't fault anyone for not moving the game to Chapel Hill. I mean, logistically, that's difficult to kind of put together. But you play the games that are on your schedule. You try to do the best you can. The athletic director's job is to bring you the best games possible. And I think 2021 is going to be a good one.
Hopefully. Let's just get there. I think we all, just in general, let's just get to 2021. I think we all want to put 2020 behind for a lot of reasons.
Year. I mean, this year's been, a whole barrel of suck.
But again, as I mentioned earlier, credit to them to get this 9 games in without interruption. I think that's a credit to everybody involved on that. And I know that to me is significant, because not a lot of schools will be able to say that this year. For them to get the 9 games in, I think is very significant. And it is a positive that they were able to get it in with as many, without interruption, without everybody being as safe as possible. I don't think we should not disregard that. We should not dismiss that, because Andrew, I think 3-4 months ago, we probably would have been saying, geez, I don't even think there's going to be a game play. So,
well, I mean, we all thought, the season was just going to shut down because, when the fall sports started, dropping, basically your non-revenue sports, they all dropped. Like, okay, when's football going to drop? When the Ivy League did their canary in the coal mine move, and we're like, oh, it's just a matter of time. And basically everyone except, a handful of conferences in the FBS decided to go. And then the rest of the FBS kind of creeped back in. But still, I mean, outside of a few FCS schools, I mean, this is it. This is all that stayed on board. But you have to applaud everyone involved, between players, coaching staff, support staff, fans. I mean, it's not been fun. It's not been convenient. It's not been enjoyable. But we've all been having to do uncomfortable and inconvenient things to make sure that we're able to do what we're doing. And we have to salute everyone for doing their part, even if if they do it kicking and screaming. It's not meant to be fun. If it was fun, we would have been doing this already. It's not. It's not cool. It's not enjoyable. It's inconvenient, but you do what you got to do. And I think everyone ultimately did what they had to do.
Amen to that. All right, that'll do it for this edition of Night Shift. Andrew, of course, you're going to be working on your knee-jerk reaction. That'll be up on the site. So we have a more detailed recap of this. And hopefully we'll do this again for a bowl game. We'll definitely be doing some of this for basketball games as well. Just keep it on Black and Go Banneret, UCF_Banneret on Twitter, and of course blackandgobanneret.com for all the latest at UCF. And you'll have a lot of videos on our YouTube page for all UCF sports throughout as we continue to cover all of UCF athletics. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page. You never know when we'll post up videos. Make sure you like them, send us a review as well. And of course, our weekly podcast that usually comes out every Thursday morning or so will be out there. And of course, make sure you read Andrew's stuff. Andrew, where they can find you on Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter at StatBoyDrew, and I'm always trapezing around the Facebook pages as well. Amen
to that. Andrew, good stuff, man. I've enjoyed doing this with you. It was fun. Thanks for maybe, make sure we didn't all jump off a cliff or something, after that game, and having some perspective. That's right. That is Andrew Gluchov. I'm Eric Lopez. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Night Shift as we recap the War on I-4. UCF wins 58-46. Good night and charge on.